Good evening, and we begin tonight with a shooting outside of Portland High School just as classes were letting out. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Molko.
And I'm Laurel Porter. For the second time in less than a month, a student was hurt in a shooting near Jefferson High School. Police say around 3 o'clock today, two 17-year-olds who just left school were driving near North Killingsworth and Haight Avenue. Someone in one of the cars fired rounds at the other car, hitting one of the students in the shoulder. That student is expected to recover. Back in October, two students were hurt in a shooting at Jefferson just as classes were getting out. Bullet holes were found on the outside of the gym. There's been no word of arrest in that case or in today's shooting.
And we'll keep you posted there. As we head into late fall and winter, overnight lows have been dipping near freezing across the metro area, and those living on the streets turn to what is often their only option to stay warm: emergency shelters. Though when it comes to those run by the city and county right now, apparently it's not cold enough. Catherine Hook explains why some are saying it's time for that to change.
The Union Gospel Mission opened their emergency winter shelter at the Southeast Portland Church November 1st. Since then, they've been at near capacity every night. It's one reason some nonprofits wonder if it's time for the city and county to lower their threshold when it comes to opening their cold weather shelters. At Central Church of the Nazarene, there are 45 shelter beds, blankets, and a promise: those who sleep here tonight will be warm.
Coming from homelessness, being able to come in and actually get a good night's sleep, knowing that you're safe, the things that you bring in here are generally safe. It's a good experience to be able to give back to other people.
Heather Thoreau is a staff member with Union Gospel Mission. The nonprofit has partnered with this church since 2020, opening a cold weather sleep shelter here from November through May.
Part of the reason we chose this part of the city is there wasn't a lot of shelter or services.
And it shows.
Unfortunately, for me, I turn away several people every night, and it breaks my heart because it is cold, and it's not cold enough that the city will open up, but nevertheless, we could be losing lives. So
you hope that changes the way?
I really do, yes.
Right now, the city and county's Joint Office of Homeless Services is monitoring weather conditions, but a spokesperson tells us right now they don't appear close to their thresholds for activating shelters. Those thresholds include forecasts calling for either temperatures 25 or below, an inch or more of snow, or overnight temps below 32 with an inch of driving rain.
We really are looking forward to when the county's going to open up their emergency shelters. It just seems like we have to wait until it gets almost too cold.
Scott Kerman is executive director of Blanchet House, which offers meals and resources to the homeless. He gets the logistics and funding required to open additional emergency shelters, but given the last few winters and summers, he believes the thresholds should change.
I think, generally speaking, we have to have a broader conversation about homelessness being a climate change issue.
Back at the church, they're expecting another capacity night.
I try to get in people as quickly as I can. It is cold outside.
Come 6 a.m., guests will return to the streets and wonder if the next night will include space for them. In Southeast Portland, Catherine Cook, KGW News.
And the city and county say this week's forecast may trigger a different kind of action. For example, it might include organizing outreach workers to deliver cold weather survival gear to people without shelter. So let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino now. Matt, give us a sense of these overnight lows. How chilly is it going to get?
Yeah, David, the last two mornings have been our coldest mornings of the fall so far. We dropped to 30 this morning and 30 yesterday morning. So below freezing, that's cold if you're outside all night, right? Right now, it's 45 degrees, but that's a little deceiving because look at this number. East winds at 24, and the air is dry, which means it's just removing heat from your body even more efficiently with the wind, with the dry air, and the temperature still at 45. It's still chilly outside, and we'll be dropping down to around freezing tomorrow morning for many, many locations. Now, right now, temperatures holding in the 40s here in Portland, Vancouver, Troutdale, but look, Scappoose is down to 35 already, 10 degrees cooler than Portland, already down to 30 in Corvallis, and that is all a function of the wind. You can see the east winds where they're strong, we're in the 40s. Scappoose, light winds, they're in the 30s. Same thing down the valley. So the east winds are keeping our temperatures up a little bit, but in a way it's artificial because it's still very cold, dry air. So it's going to stay clear and windy for the next couple of days. Lows in the upper 20s and 30s all week long as we head through this week. David?
Thank you, Matt.
In a developing story tonight, a crime spree that started in Oregon ended with police shooting 2 suspects in Washington. Tonight, one of those suspects has died, and an innocent bystander has been hurt as well. Police in Lewis County, Washington today spotted 2 suspects wanted out of Oregon and started following them up I-5. Things got violent when the suspects got off the interstate near Grand Mound. A witness says one of them shot a woman whose car they were trying to steal. Then they stole the witness's truck instead. The woman who was shot is expected to survive. About 5 miles away, police caught up with the suspects, and investigators say multiple officers from different agencies fired at them. We are working tonight to find out exactly why the suspects were wanted in Oregon.
Well, it's been nearly a week since the midterm elections, and we now know who will represent Oregon and Washington in Congress. The final 3 races to be called, and they were all very, very close. An updated ballot count tonight in Washington and Marion counties solidified Democrat Andrea Salinas' lead in Oregon's new 6. Now, that grew to about 6,000 votes over Republican Mike Erickson. The Associated Press has declared Salinas the winner. Just yesterday, the AP declaring Republican Lori Chavez DeRemer the winner in Oregon's 5th. That flips that seat from blue to red. Democrat Jamie McLeod Skinner there conceding the race over the weekend. Let's take you to Washington. The AP has Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez beating Republican Joe Kent. Her lead, though, has narrowed to about 3,200 votes, and Kent is not conceding the race. Instead, he is telling voters to make sure their ballots were processed and were not rejected for a signature issue.
It may seem like it took a long time for us to find out who won in some races. So today, Pat Doris and the story team checked in with Oregon's Secretary of State to see if the ballot count was going as planned.
Throughout this election season, we've heard a lot of concerns from you about election security and how long it takes to count ballots, for example. We talked about it with Oregon Secretary of State Shemia Fagan, who's in charge of elections. She says the time it takes to count the ballots actually is a good thing for election security in Oregon.
This is just the process working itself out. Just as an example, one of the biggest bottlenecks in elections processing is signature verification. So because we vote at home, it's that signature signed under penalty of perjury, somebody saying, I'm the person who is the registered voter on this envelope, right? That's a process that every single signature, out of the millions and millions of ballots that are sent in Oregon every election cycle, every single envelope, there's a barcode on that envelope and it's scanned. And then on the computer comes up that person's voter registration file. And most importantly, their voter registration signature. And that is then checked with the signature on that ballot envelope. Again, every single one is checked. And so it's our security measures that actually make it take a while to do that processing. You know, it would be a lot quicker to get on an airplane if I could just park my car and walk right on the plane. But there's TSA does its job, and there's security measures that are put in place.
We asked Fagan specifically about Clackamas County. You'll remember that counting ballots there took weeks during the May primary because of blurry barcodes that were sent out. Secretary Fagan said her office had someone in Clackamas County this election as they tested the machines, so they were confident the ballots were printed correctly.
You can watch the story each weekday at 6 o'clock right here on KGW for more in-depth looks into the big issues affecting our community.
Let's talk about a huge settlement with Google after the company was accused of misleading consumers over how and when it tracked their movements. The settlement was announced by Oregon's Attorney General today. It says Google misled users into thinking they had turned off location tracking, but in fact, Google continued collecting information about where they went. As part of negotiations, Google has agreed to be more transparent. That includes making location tracking policies more visible. The settlement with 40 states totals $391 million. Oregon will receive nearly $15 million.